I pushed open the office door, my black heels clicking lightly against the floor. On my first day at this company, I wore nothing flashy, just a simple white shirt and a neat black skirt. No makeup, no jewelry. Just an ordinary-looking secretary. Of course, that made them look at me with thinly veiled contempt. As soon as I placed my briefcase down, I caught the sound of snickering from the corner of the room. Look at her. Bet she's only good for making coffee and typing memos. I walked straight to my assigned desk, ignoring the sneers and judgmental whispers. This was only the beginning of my plan. Each day, I dutifully carried out the most menial tasks. Making coffee, photocopying documents, running pointless errands for the managers. I endured their condescending looks, the snide comments thrown around. I pretended not to care. While they only saw a lowly secretary with her head bowed. I was seeing every blueprint of their internal operations. 3 weeks later, the most critical project of the quarter passed through my department. I sat silently in the corner, observing how the management team formed their little cliques. Just dump everything on the secretary. If anything goes wrong, we'll blame her. Easier to hit our targets without risking ourselves. I heard every word clearly, but I simply picked up the folder and nodded. They thought they were setting a trap for a clueless pawn. But in reality, they were walking straight into mine. The moment they handed me all the documents to process, I quietly made subtle but critical alterations to the reports. On the surface, it looked like diligent work. But hidden within, the statistics were tweaked to expose glaring inconsistencies at the highest level. I had quietly attached the managers' names to every official submission. Naturally, they all signed off without a second glance. At that point, they thought I was nothing more than a loyal, naive little worker. They had no idea they had just handed me the sword to cut them down. The weekly meeting arrived faster than I expected. Everyone gathered in the glass conference room, the so-called elite team sitting smugly at the long table. I entered quietly, carrying a neat stack of folders, the ones they had so eagerly pushed onto me to finalize. I placed a folder in front of each manager, bowed my head respectfully, and took my seat at the far end of the room. Just another invisible worker, blending into the background. The meeting started with the head of operations standing up confidently. Thanks to the tireless efforts of our management team, we've completed the quarterly report ahead of schedule, he boasted. Polite claps filled the room. I sat still, my face unreadable. He continued presenting, flipping through the slides, until he reached the financial summary. And then, it began. At first, it was subtle. A few furrowed brows. Confused whispers. Why do these numbers not match? Who approved these projections? One manager shifted uncomfortably in his seat, thumbing quickly through the report. Another manager's face turned pale. I kept my head down, carefully hiding the smirk threatening to surface. They hadn't realized yet. Every report had their signature on it. The CEO, an aging man known for his brutal zero-tolerance policy on mistakes, narrowed his eyes at the screen. Who prepared these reports? He barked. Silence. Managers began stealing glances at each other. A few pairs of eyes darted toward me, sitting quietly at the far end. It was the secretary, someone finally mumbled. Perfect. I stood up, slowly and deliberately, and spoke for the first time. Sir, as per standard protocol, I only compiled the documents based on the final versions approved and signed by the department heads. I placed another set of papers on the table. Copies of every signed approval form. The room turned ice cold. The CEO flipped through the papers, his frown deepening with every page. Signed by the managers. Every page. Every decision. I didn't need to say another word. Their signatures were damning enough. After a tense silence, the CEO turned toward the management team. You authorized these figures? The managers stumbled over themselves, each trying to push blame elsewhere. Excuses piled on top of each other like a collapsing tower. I was misinformed. I didn't review the final details. Maybe the secretary. The CEO slammed his hand on the table. Enough. He stood, his voice like a whip crack. Every one of you signed off without due diligence. Gross negligence. He pointed toward the door. Effective immediately, I am suspending the entire management team pending investigation. I lowered my eyes humbly as security entered the room, escorting the red-faced managers out one by one. As I gathered my documents, preparing to leave, I caught a glimpse of the CEO watching me thoughtfully. There was a spark of recognition there, but he said nothing. Let him wonder. The real revelation was still to come. This was only the first act. They thought they were punishing a worthless secretary. They had no idea. They were fueling the rise of their future boss. After the chaos of the meeting, the office atmosphere shifted dramatically. Gone were the arrogant managers who once barked orders across the room. In their place, an uneasy silence settled over the cubicles. No one dared to speak too loudly. No one dared to even look me in the eye. Good. I moved through the building like a ghost, present, but invisible, gathering everything I needed without drawing attention. While they scrambled to survive, I was solidifying my next move. 2 weeks earlier, before I even set foot in this company, I'd quietly begun acquiring its stock. Through dummy corporations and silent partners, I slowly, methodically bought my way into power. At first, I had been just a shadow in the background. Whispering into the right ears. Planting the right ideas. Every slip-up the managers made? Every oversight they thought no one noticed? I noticed. And I documented everything. Their incompetence was my fuel. The internal rot of this company was so deep. I didn't need to lift a finger to sabotage them. They were already destroying themselves. All I had to do was be patient. Now, with the old management suspended and under investigation, the company was scrambling for leadership. Desperation made people careless. Shares began to quietly change hands. Nervous investors dumped their stakes, fearing instability. Guess who was waiting patiently to scoop them up? Me. One afternoon, as I pretended to refill the copy machine, I overheard a critical conversation between two senior executives. We can't survive a hostile takeover right now. If anyone moves to buy majority control, the board will cave in. A slow smile spread across my face. They had no idea. The hostile takeover was already inside the building. Later that evening, in the empty office, I sat at my desk under the dim fluorescent light, quietly sending one final email. It was addressed to the board of directors. Subject line: Special proposal for immediate leadership restructuring. Attached: a complete dossier outlining all the failures of the old management, with full legal documentation, witness testimonies, and, most importantly, a proposal for a new executive team, handpicked by me. At the bottom of the proposal, under a nondescript corporate name, sat the name of the primary shareholder. Me. I hit send. And then I leaned back, closing my eyes briefly, listening to the quiet hum of the empty office. Tomorrow, they would read it. Tomorrow, they would realize what was happening. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. After the chaos of the meeting, the office atmosphere shifted dramatically. Gone were the arrogant managers who once barked orders across the room. In their place, an uneasy silence settled over the cubicles. No one dared to speak too loudly. No one dared to even look me in the eye. Good. I moved through the building like a ghost, present, but invisible, gathering everything I needed without drawing attention. While they scrambled to survive, I was solidifying my next move. 2 weeks earlier, before I even set foot in this company, I had quietly begun acquiring its stock. Through dummy corporations and silent partners, I slowly, methodically bought my way into power. At first, I had been just a shadow in the background, whispering into the right ears, planting the right ideas. Every slip-up the managers made? Every oversight they thought no one noticed? I noticed. And I documented everything. Their incompetence was my fuel. The internal rot of this company was so deep, I didn't need to lift a finger to sabotage them. They were already destroying themselves. All I had to do was be patient. Now, with the old management suspended and under investigation, the company was scrambling for leadership. Desperation made people careless. Shares began to quietly change hands. Nervous investors dumped their stakes, fearing instability. Guess who was waiting patiently to scoop them up? Me. One afternoon, as I pretended to refill the copy machine, I overheard a critical conversation between two senior executives. "We can't survive a hostile takeover right now. If anyone moves to buy majority control, the board will cave in." A slow smile spread across my face. They had no idea the hostile takeover was already inside the building. Later that evening, in the empty office, I sat at my desk under the dim fluorescent light, quietly sending one final email. It was addressed to the board of directors. Subject line: Special proposal for immediate leadership restructuring. Attached, a complete dossier outlining all the failures of the old management, with full legal documentation, witness testimonies, and, most importantly, a proposal for a new executive team. Handpicked by me. At the bottom of the proposal, under a nondescript corporate name, sat the name of the primary shareholder, me. I hit send. And then I leaned back, closing my eyes briefly, listening to the quiet hum of the empty office. Tomorrow, they would read it. Tomorrow, they would realize what was happening. Tomorrow, the real fun would begin. The next morning, I arrived at the office early. The building was eerily quiet, as if it could sense the storm brewing just beyond the horizon. I carried nothing but my usual plain black handbag and an unreadable expression. Just another invisible secretary, at least to those who hadn't yet opened their emails. But by the time the clock struck 9 a.m., the tremors had started. In meeting rooms and break areas, people whispered in frantic tones. The board of directors had called an emergency all-hands meeting. Attendance mandatory. I took my seat quietly at the very back of the main conference room, where rows of anxious employees gathered. Phones buzzed quietly in pockets. Murmured rumors swirled. Hostile takeover. New ownership. Management purge. No one knew the full story yet. No one, except me. I crossed my legs neatly and waited. The door at the front swung open sharply. The board of directors filed in, their faces grim. Behind them walked a lawyer from a top firm, clutching a thick binder marked confidential. When the chairman of the board finally spoke, the entire room fell silent. Effective immediately, a majority stake in our company has been acquired by a new principal shareholder, he announced. This shareholder has submitted a full restructuring plan, including evidence of gross mismanagement by previous executives. He flipped open the binder with a heavy thud. Under unanimous vote, the board has accepted the proposal. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone behind me whispered, "Who? Who would even do this?" I smiled faintly, but said nothing. The chairman cleared his throat. "We would like to introduce the new primary owner and acting CEO." He turned toward the entrance. Ms. Evelyn Hart. Silence. Dead, stunned silence. Every head turned. I stood up. Slowly, deliberately, I walked down the aisle, heels clicking sharply on the polished floor, past rows of wide-eyed employees who could barely process what they were seeing. The secretary. The invisible woman they ignored, mocked, underestimated, was now walking to the front of the room. Their new boss. I took the microphone from the chairman, my hands steady. "Good morning," I said, voice calm but ringing clear through the hall. "For those who don't know me, I've been with you every day. I've fetched your coffee, copied your papers, typed your mistakes without a word." The murmurs grew louder. I let the silence stretch, savoring the moment. "Today, things change," I continued. "This company has rotted from arrogance, entitlement, and laziness. That ends now." I turned toward the former senior managers, those few who hadn't yet been escorted out. Those who worked hard with integrity have nothing to fear. But those who looked down on others, who abused their power, you will find your time here very short indeed. I let my gaze sweep across the crowd, some faces pale, some odd, some ashamed. Good. They needed to remember this feeling. They needed to understand. The person you ignore today might be the one who owns everything you take for granted tomorrow. That afternoon, pink slips were handed out like candy. Entire departments were restructured. New blood was brought in, young, hungry, talented professionals who knew what it meant to fight for success. And me? I took the top floor corner office, the one that used to belong to the smuggest executive in the building. From my desk, I could see the entire city sprawling beneath me. My kingdom. Built not from privilege, but from patience, precision, and a plan no one ever saw coming. For a while, it seemed like peace had finally arrived. The saboteurs were gone. The company's reputation was recovering. New projects were launching under my direction, and investors once again smiled upon us. From the outside, it looked like I had won. But deep down, I knew better. True enemies never attack head-on. They wait. They adapt. They evolve. And mine was no different. The first sign came quietly. A lawsuit. Filed anonymously, but with accusations sharp enough to draw blood. Wrongful termination, it claimed. Workplace discrimination. All lies. Fabricated stories crafted by those who still burned with resentment. Normally, it would have been easy to brush off. But the media, they smelled blood. Stories began to circulate. Ruthless CEO crushes employees. Behind the smile, the tyrant who took over. I sat at my desk late into the night, reading every headline with cold detachment. They wanted to paint me as a villain? Fine. But they would regret pushing me into that role. A week later, the second strike landed. A proxy group, quietly backed by former board members I had ousted, began buying up scattered shares of the company. Their goal was clear. Stage a hostile takeover from within. They wanted to erase everything I had built. Put the old guard back on the throne. They believed I was alone now. Vulnerable. Easier to destroy. They believed wrong. The following morning, I summoned my legal team, PR specialists, and financial advisors to the war room. Plans were drawn. Defenses strengthened. Allies mobilized. If they wanted a war, I would show them exactly how ruthless I could be. But I wasn't going to fight them head-on like they expected. No. I would do what I always did best. Let them believe they were winning. Let them overextend. Let them destroy themselves. And when the time was right, I would strike so precisely, so thoroughly, that there would be nothing left of their little rebellion but ashes. I leaned over the table, staring at the floor plans of our corporate structure, the shareholder charts, the media influence maps. Every piece had to be perfect. Every move calculated 3 steps ahead. This wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about legacy. This was about proving, to everyone who had ever doubted me, that I wasn't just here to win a battle. I was here to own the entire war. Weeks of quiet warfare unfolded behind the scenes. I let the media frenzy continue unchecked, allowing my enemies to believe their narrative was working. Allowing them to grow bolder. More reckless. The proxy group bought up shares aggressively, burning through their war chest at an unsustainable pace. I leaked just enough internal rumors, strategically placed whispers about my loss of control, to keep them convinced I was spiraling. They didn't realize they were walking straight into a trap I had spent months preparing. It all came to a head at the annual shareholders meeting. They thought it would be my funeral. I let them believe it.